Hi, I'm Mr. Thorns-Groves, Ms. Volgotha Channel anchor. The night of July 2nd, 2025 began like any other on the bustling Bali Strait. This narrow channel of water, a vital artery connecting the islands of Java and Bali, hummed with the routine passage of ferries. On board the KMP Tunu Pratama Jaya, travellers settled in for the short journey from Ketapang to Gilimanuk. Some were tourists anticipating a holiday. Others were locals returning home to their families. The air was filled with the low murmur of conversations and the gentle rocking of the vessel. No one could have known that this ordinary voyage, traversing a mere 5 kilometers of sea, was destined to become a scene of unimaginable horror. The ferry was a familiar sight, a workhorse on one of Indonesia's busiest maritime routes, carrying not just people, but also the commerce that binds these islands together. The ferry departed Ketapang port under the cloak of a dark, moonless sky. Its lights cast a lonely glow upon the waves as it pushed into the strait. The official manifest listed 53 passengers and 12 crew members, alongside a heavy cargo of 22 vehicles, mostly large trucks. This journey was a routine, almost monotonous, part of daily life in the archipelago. Families sought rest in the passenger cabins, truck drivers perhaps dozed in their cabs, and crew members went about their duties. The crossing was expected to take less than an hour. But as the vessel moved further from the shore, an unseen and deadly problem was developing deep within its hull, turning this simple trip into a desperate fight for survival against the unforgiving sea. The first signs of trouble were subtle, easily dismissed. A slight list. A strange shudder felt through the deck, but within minutes these minor anomalies escalated into a full-blown emergency. The ship began to tilt dangerously, a movement far too severe to be caused by the waves alone. Panic started to ripple through the passengers as the floor slanted beneath their feet. The casual atmosphere of the journey evaporated, replaced by a sudden chilling realization that something was terribly wrong. Screams began to echo through the corridors as the vessel groaned under the strain, its structure failing in the dark waters just off the coast of Bali. The voyage into a holiday paradise had quickly turned into a descent into a nightmare. This tragedy did not happen in a remote, uncharted part of the ocean. It unfolded in plain sight on a heavily trafficked route witnessed by officials on shore. An officer at the Gilimanuk port watched in horror as the ferry's lights began to behave erratically before disappearing from view. Initial attempts to raise the vessel on the radio were met with silence. The KMP Tunu Pratama Jaya was on its own, its passengers and crew facing the terrifying reality of a sinking ship. The proximity to land offered no immediate salvation, only a cruel reminder of how close they were to safety, yet how impossibly far away it suddenly seemed. The sea was about to claim another vessel, adding to a long and painful history of maritime disasters in these waters. Survivor testimonies paint a harrowing picture of the ferry's last moments. The ship tilted sharply, not once but 3 times. According to one survivor, a man named Imran, the first tilt was alarming. The second was violent, sending unsecured items and people tumbling across the cabin. By the third, icy seawater was no longer just outside. It was flooding in, pouring through doorways and windows with terrifying force. The lights flickered and died, plunging the chaotic scene into near-total darkness. Panic erupted. People were screaming, crying, and desperately trying to find a way out as the water level rose with shocking speed. The ship was no longer a vessel. It had become a trap, rapidly filling with water and dragging its terrified occupants down. The fight for life was primal and desperate. Bejo Santoso, another survivor, recounted the final terrifying seconds. He said the ferry rolled over completely just 3 minutes after it started listing. There was no time for an organized evacuation, no time for life rafts to be properly deployed. It was a mad scramble for survival. People pushed and clawed their way toward any opening, any chance of escape. Bejo jumped from the tilting deck just as it went under, grabbing a life jacket that floated past him in the churning water. Others were not so lucky. 64-year-old Supadi described being pulled down with the ship to a depth of 7 meters before he managed to fight his way back to the surface, a testament to the sheer will to live in the face of certain death. The official manifest is a cold, bureaucratic document, but the reality of who was on board is a story of families torn apart. Officially, there were 65 souls on the ferry, but as rescuers pull more bodies from the sea, a tragic and common problem in Indonesia is coming to light. The manifest was incomplete. Grieving relatives have arrived at the port, clutching photographs of loved ones who they know were on the ferry, but whose names are nowhere to be found on the official list. This discrepancy complicates the rescue efforts, turning the search for the missing into a painful and uncertain waiting game. For these families, the lack of official recognition only deepens their anguish and despair. As of today, July 4th, the human cost is devastating. 6 people are confirmed dead, their lives cut short in the dark waters of the Bali Strait. Among them are a mother and her 3-year-old son, a heartbreaking loss that underscores the indiscriminate cruelty of the disaster. At least 31 people have been rescued, many found clinging to debris after hours in the water, exhausted and hypothermic. But dozens remain missing, and with each passing hour, the hope of finding them alive fades. The sea is a vast and unforgiving place, and authorities fear many of the missing may be trapped inside the fully submerged wreckage lying on the seabed below. As dawn broke over the Bali Strait, the true scale of the tragedy became clear, launching one of the largest rescue operations the region has seen in years. A flotilla of more than 15 boats, including naval ships, police patrol boats and vessels from the Search and Rescue Agency, now crisscrosses the search area. They are joined by local fishermen who, without hesitation, steered their own small boats into the rough seas to help look for survivors. From the air, a helicopter scans the waves, its crew searching for any sign of life. A bright life jacket, a piece of wreckage, a person clinging to hope in the vast expanse of water. The operation is a race against time, a desperate and coordinated effort to save those who might still be out there. However, the forces of nature are working against them. The rescue teams are battling immense challenges that hinder their progress and diminish the chances of finding more survivors. The waves in the strait are dangerously high, reaching up to 2.5 meters, making it difficult for smaller boats to operate safely and for rescuers to spot anyone in the water. Beneath the surface, powerful currents are at play, capable of dragging debris and people far from the wreck site. These conditions not only endanger the rescuers themselves, but also create a vast and unpredictable search area, making the task of locating the missing an almost impossible feat of navigation and endurance. The stories of those who survived are miracles of resilience. Many were pulled from the water by fishermen hours after the ferry went down, found unconscious and drifting miles from where the ship sank. Imran, who escaped through a gap as the ship capsized, described finding a life jacket in the dark and clinging to it until a fishing boat spotted him. Supadi and 3 others huddled together using their combined body heat and shared life jackets to stay afloat until they were rescued. These accounts highlight the critical importance of life-saving equipment and the sheer luck that separates the living from the dead. But for every survivor, there is a story of loss, and the rescuers know the clock is ticking. The focus of the operation is now twofold: to continue searching the surface for survivors and to locate and assess the sunken wreckage. The ferry now lies fully submerged on the ocean floor, and a grim possibility hangs over the rescue mission that many of the missing are trapped inside. Divers are being prepared to descend to the wreck, a perilous task given the strong currents and poor visibility. It is a somber and dangerous mission, one that may transition from rescue to recovery. President Prabowo Subianto, on an official trip abroad, has ordered an all-out emergency response. But for the families waiting anxiously on the shore, every passing minute feels like an eternity. This tragedy, while shocking, is tragically not an isolated incident. It is the latest chapter in Indonesia's long and sorrowful history of maritime disasters. As an archipelago of over 17,000 islands, ferries are the lifeblood of the nation, connecting communities and economies. Yet, they are also a recurring source of national grief. We remember the sinking of the MV Sinar Bangun, on Lake Toba in 2018, where nearly 200 people are believed to have died, many of them unaccounted for because the vessel was dangerously overcrowded. We remember the countless other accidents, large and small, that have claimed thousands of lives over the decades, each one a grim reminder of systemic failures. The root causes are well known and have been debated for years. A persistent problem is the lax enforcement of safety regulations. While rules regarding vessel capacity, maintenance schedules, and the availability of life-saving equipment exist on paper, their application is often uneven and inconsistent. Overloading of both passengers and cargo is a common practice, driven by profit motives that place economic concerns above human life. The KMP Tunu Pratama Jaya, like many ferries before it, may have been carrying more than it was certified for, a dangerous gamble that ended in the worst possible way. The discrepancy in the passenger manifest is a clear symptom of this deep-rooted issue. Experts and maritime safety advocates have been sounding the alarm for years, calling for urgent and sweeping reforms. Their recommendations are clear and consistent. There must be stricter, non-negotiable enforcement of passenger limits and cargo weights. Regular and thorough inspections of all vessels, not just cursory checks, must become mandatory. Crew training needs to be improved to ensure they can handle emergencies effectively. Furthermore, technology such as better weather monitoring and vessel tracking systems should be universally adopted to provide early warnings and assist in rescue operations. These are not new ideas, but their implementation has been painfully slow. Ultimately, preventing future tragedies requires a fundamental shift in culture, from one of tolerance for risk to one that prioritizes safety above all else. This responsibility falls not only on the government and regulatory bodies, but also on ferry operators and even passengers themselves. Tougher penalties for violations, transparent investigations that lead to real accountability, and a sustained public awareness campaign are all necessary components of a safer maritime future for Indonesia. As we mourn the victims of the KMP Tunu Pratama Jaya, the greatest tribute we can pay them is to ensure that such a preventable disaster never happens again. The question is whether this latest tragedy will finally be the catalyst for meaningful change.